If you're on the internet, you're probably excited about Rogue One, a Star Wars story, which is set to hit theaters this December. It's the first Star Wars film that is not a numbered episode in the Skywalker family saga. Instead, it's a lightsaber-free heist movie that follows a new character, Jyn Erso, as she gets entangled with the rebellion and is recruited to help steal the plans to the newly completed Death Star. Lucasfilm tells us that the inspiration for the story came from a suggestion by ILM's chief creative officer John Knoll during a pre-production meeting for Episode 7. Even without his title, if you're at all familiar with John's resume, you'd agree that he's one of the most creative people in Hollywood today. He co-created Photoshop and has had his fingers in almost every major effects movie of the past few decades. But if creative means original or unique, then this Death Star pitch was the least creative Star Wars idea possible. It is quite literally the most told side story in Star Wars Legends history. It goes way back before the phrase expanded universe was even invented. There were so many requests to tell and retell the story of the theft of the Death Star plans that it became kind of an unfunny joke to the Star Wars story group, and a giant mess to any fan who hoped to keep it all consistent. So, before Rogue One settles the canon once and for all, let's take a few minutes to honor those who came before. Here are 8 people who already stole the Death Star plans. Okay, so this appearance is still technically canon, and it's not technically the rebels stealing the Death Star plans, but this bit of connective plot was so iconic that George Lucas felt the need to put it on screen. And if that wasn't subtle enough for you, he actually showed us the construction of Death Star in Episode 3. Even though it seems willingly handed over, I'm pretty sure Dooku is screwing over the Geonosians here somehow, so I'm counting it as stealing. Back in the 1980s, NPR produced a radio drama version of Star Wars. It took the 2-hour movie and expanded it into a 6.5-hour audio epic. Of course, some of the new ground had to cover the theft of the Death Star plans. In the second episode of the show, Princess Leia was on one of her famous mercy missions, this time to a planet called Dwaltir. After getting hit on by a creepy Imperial officer named Tion, she meets a rebel agent named Basso. In a process that is left completely unexplained,
I absorbed it under hypnotic imprint.
Stored in his brain.
Science fiction enough for you? Leia ends up saving Basso, and rebel technicians extract the data.
What is it?
An ultimate weapon, some sort of enormous battle station. They've codenamed it the Death Star.
What?
We need more information, Leia. Here is your chance to help.
Leia's adopted dad, Bail Organa, wants to deliver the plans himself, but eventually agrees to let the princess do it. Anticipating danger, he tells her to pick up Obi-Wan Kenobi along the way. George Lucas enjoyed these radio dramas so much that they were considered second only to the movie in terms of canon, but that obviously didn't deter future thieves. After rousing indifference to Willow and Howard the Duck, Lucasfilm spent most of the 1990s making TV shows and computer games. X-Wing was the company's big return to Star Wars. It was basically a flight simulator, but followed a loose story. In the second mission, your character Kayan Farlander ends up rerouting Imperial transmissions so that they're copied to Rebel Outpost AX-235. Naturally, these transmissions contain the plans to the Death Star, and they're given to Princess Leia aboard the Tantive 4.
Here are the secret plans, Princess Leia.
I will bring them safely to Alderaan.
We may not have had smartphones in the 80s, but we did have choose-your-own-adventure books. Well, some people did. Jedi Dawn was an obscure title that was published only in the UK. In it, you adventure along as Havit Storm, the grandson of a Jedi and wielder of a rare orange lightsaber. Because all new characters have to meet old characters, Havit ends up in a feud with Boba Fett for some reason. But more importantly, he flirts with the girl to gain access to the Imperial base and eventually the Death Star plans. He broadcasts the plans to the Tantive 4, and the rest of his fate is up to you. Most famous of all the Death Star plan thieves is Cal Katarn. He anchored the long-running Dark Forces game franchise and goes on to become a Jedi Knight. But the least impressive thing Cal ever does is steal the plans of the Death Star. The feat is so unimpressive, it happens during the game's free demo level, while the player is still being told how to use the controls.
This is too easy. Now to get to my ship.
Maybe if the Imperials tried guarding the plans, they wouldn't get stolen so often.
Kyle delivers the plans to the Rebel Alliance. Soon afterwards, the Death Star is destroyed. But even as the Alliance celebrates this victory, another sinister plot is set in motion that will become an even greater concern for the Rebellion.
Young Han Solo may be in the movie news, but his book adventures were well established. In Rebel Dawn, we meet Bria Theron, one of the smuggler's many former girlfriends. At this point, she's become a rebel agent and has a storyline very similar to Havet Storm's. She also leads a raid on the Imperial base on Turprawa. She also steals the plans, and she also broadcasts them to Princess Leia aboard the Tantive 4. She accomplishes the mission, but Theron and her squad pay with their lives. Many authors contributed great things to the Star Wars Legends universe, but few were as beloved by fans as Timothy Zahn and Michael Stackpole. The two teamed up for this all-star tale, but unfortunately the end result just felt like a way to make their favorite pet character seem important. With a plot ripped right out of the 80s, an Imperial officer decides to defect to the Rebellion and bring the plans to the Death Star with him. On his way, the officer is mugged by Miranda Savage, and she takes his bag and the data disk. Since petty theft is the kind of problem best dealt with by two senators on a planet far away, Bail Organa sends Garmble Iblis to Darknell to retrieve the disk. He gets it back, but manages to blow his cover as a rebel in the process. Iblis is forced to go into hiding, thus explaining why the character isn't around for the events of the Clone Wars. In the mid-2000s, game company LucasArts was aiming to return to more story-infused content, even in the sequel to a popular first-person shooter. Inspired by the fan group with the same name, Battlefront 2 followed the 501st Legion of Stormtroopers from their first Clone Wars battles through to the Battle of Endor. Naturally, this included a stint on the first Death Star. During a particularly bad shift,
one of the rebels managed to get his hands on the plans for this battle station. We cannot allow those plans to leave this outpost.
A rebel escapes the cell block with the aid of a Jedi and briefly steals the plans to the battle station.
Well done. The plans have been secured.
The 501st kills the rebel, but somehow the plans get away anyhow, and the squad is reassigned in disgrace.
After the embarrassment of the prison break, Lord Vader removed us from our comfortable belay and began dragging the 501st across the galaxy in a dangerous hunt for the now missing Death Star plans. Ironically, our punishment eventually proved to be our salvation. The poor souls who took our place in the detention area were completely wiped out when the Death Star was destroyed.
With LucasArts focused mainly on console games, Ubisoft was tapped to attempt to bring Star Wars to the emerging handheld gaming market. Lethal Alliance follows Twi'lek mercenary Rhianna Saren as she, you guessed it,
Steal the plans to the Death Star.
Somehow, Cal Katarn is the one who hires her to do this. Maybe Cal used her as a diversion to make his plan-stealing mission easier? Whatever it is that Rhianna steals, she takes it to Leia on Alderaan and continues to work for the Rebellion for years to come. And that was the last time anyone in the Star Wars Legends universe stole the plans to the Death Star. Poor fans have bashed their heads over the years trying to smooth out and reconcile these stories. One theory claims that all the data breaches were different pieces of the puzzle, and that Leia combines them all into one set of plans before she hands them off to R2. But it doesn't really matter, because Rogue One will wash it all away with one fell swoop. But maybe, just maybe, Rogue One will somehow tip a hat to the legendary thieves who came before. What do you think? Should Cal Katarn have a cameo? Which was your favorite plan heist so far? Let us know what you think in the comments. And while you're there, please hit like and subscribe to stay up to date with future Fractal broadcasts. And if you haven't already, check out our renowned 5x5 series, where I pair up with Dave to cover 5 topical questions in 5 entertaining minutes. But for now, I'm off to transmit this video to Princess Leia, orbiting above in the Tantive 4.